My father subscribed to Life magazine. Life magazine in the 60s was a really fantastic magazine. It had incredible pictures in it. You know, it's a picture magazine. There was this spread from the Renaissance, this series of nudes, and that really grabbed me, you know? That really grabbed me. I'll go behind the armchairs, I'll lie on my tummy and I'll start copying the drawings. I just kept copying and copying over and over again, you know? It was sensual. This excitement that I felt hasn't changed much until today. That is something which I think if I lose, then I'll probably stop painting. I think these bananas, I think that's my favorite. This one here, I think I like this one best. I like the way the two bananas sort of kind of entangled in each other, you know? It's like clothes been torn off and, but yet, you know, they seem to sort of sit comfortably on the table. You know, sometimes when you're in a hurry to take your clothes off, you know?
Not very often. Now that both my parents are gone, I don't come down very often. It's not the same family house anymore, but I think he's done a good job of building the house in that kind of like same spirit. The front doors were never closed in our house except at night. We used to have lots of rambutan trees, jambu trees and all that. That's all gone. But, you know, he's planted lots of green. It looks like a jungle now from the outside, you know.
I think the only advantage of being the boy in the family is that, you know, in a traditional household, I don't get to do any housework. And I mean, that bugs my sister till now, you know.
He would never climb the rambutan tree and pick the rambutan because he was busy drawing all the time. You know, he'd just lock himself up in the bedroom and just draw, you know, while I was the one who had to climb the trees, pluck the rambutan, you know, and then sort the rambutans out and distribute them to the neighbors.
There were hopes and aspirations by my mother that I'll be an engineer or a doctor.
I mean, of course, at that time, nobody thought that, you know, being an artist, you know, you could make money from being an artist. And of course, my mother was worried, you know, because he's the boy. He's supposed to have money and support a family.
I knew that when I was growing up, I was extremely rebellious. My parents are very religious. My mother had someone come to the house to instruct me, to teach me. But I kept questioning him, you know, where's God? You know, of course he can answer, you know, but but in the end he left, you know. He just didn't come anymore. I think he was tired of me. I had all the friends around the neighborhood. We used to run around together, and I'll tell my friends, there is no God. There's no God. And they'll run home and tell their mother, hey, mom said there's no God. And their mother will tell my mother, and I'll get a beating. These are two of my favorite krises. The kris is traditionally it's a Malay weapon. There are scenes in carvings on Borobudur, which dates back like 1,000 years, of people forging a kris. See how beautifully carved it is. Yeah, it's a killing tool. Yeah, it's meant to kill. It is, something that is dangerous, but at the same time beautiful. The blade is forged by what we would call a blacksmith, but he's not an ordinary blacksmith. Normally, the empu is a spiritual person. He goes through various rituals. He's almost like a priest. He strives to put a spirit into the metal. People sometimes nowadays look down on craft, because they think it's low art, But for me, craft carries a history. That history is, like the spirit of the people.
My father had this very interesting way of introducing things to the children. There was a time, I think when we were 5 or 6, he felt it was time to draw. And so he bought us drawing blocks. So each one of us had drawing blocks, and I remember that. And my sister and I were just not interested. But my brother just picked on it, and just started drawing. And so I remember we gave our drawing blocks to him.
I think I always knew that I was going to be an artist. Because you have this inclination to make marks, to draw, on any piece of paper that I can find, So this was something embedded in me from very early on. Yeah? So there's no question about me being something else.
He was not worried that he didn't do well in school. He would preen around the house and say, I don't need to study, I've got talent. I don't need to study, I've got talent. He was very lucky that when he went to college, there was ITM, Institute of Technology Mara, and they had a great arts program, except that he actually majored in graphics rather than fine art, because he thought, I guess at that time he was worried that, being a fine arts artist, he might not make money.
The intention was always, after the foundation course, to go into fine arts, because that's what I wanted to be, But then again, these voices from my sisters and my mother and saying, oh, you're going to starve, if you become an artist, and, why don't you take design instead? So, I don't know, I went into design. After art school, I went into the commercial art world. I was working as an illustrator, as a designer, and I was working on a lot of big corporate clients, like Singapore Airlines, Singapore Tourist Promotion Board. Every week I'll make maybe 2 or 3 trips to Singapore to get briefs, to collect checks. That's always nice. But I didn't like the 9-to-5 life. I find it very difficult to conform to that. There'll be meetings after meetings, there'll be changes. When you do a piece of work, you are not the hero. The hero in advertising is the product. They hire really intelligent people to sell soap powder. I was doing very well, but I was unhappy. I just got tired of it all. So I quit. I think I quit advertising in 91, and I started painting.
Probably the most critical moment was his decision to go back to Johor Bahru, to our hometown.
I just got married a year earlier. My wife was expecting our first child. I wouldn't know whether I would make it as a painter. I went back to JB and I stayed at the back of my mother's house. My mother fed me. There was never enough money. I was almost penniless. First painting didn't work. The second painting didn't work either. Until one day, by coincidence, I met a friend who knew of a very senior artist in Malaysia, Latif Mohidin. He said, do something as simple as possible. Don't think too much. So that's how the still life paintings came about. Nothing can be more simpler than a still life. Put an object there and draw it.
And it was a very bold statement to make because in the 1990s, who was doing still life? Nobody was doing still life. And here was somebody who came and said, look, I'm going to stand in the shadow of the masters and work within that tradition. Yet with a great deal of eccentricity and a lot of quirkiness. And of course, Zaki has a great deal of humor. He's a humorous person himself.
So I did a whole series of still lifes of fruits in various compromising positions. That's when the works started selling. For a while, it became my trademark. I've always returned, to the still life on and off. I might do 3 to 4 pieces a year. Oil is like a long love affair. Acrylics, well, they're more like quickies. I don't know, what do you call this? But it's a very phallic-looking thing, isn't it? I just saw it at the shop and I thought it looks nice. I was looking for a small object actually to put this big thing on, something pure, almost invisible. The first stages of painting is always very technical. At this moment, I'm just getting to get a grip with the form, the color of the whole thing. So I might not be too concerned about the rasa yet, yeah? Without the form, you cannot get the rasa. The notion of form in the Western context and the notion of form in the Eastern context are quite different, Within the Western context, form it's something which is totally physical. Looks like a zeppelin, huh? Although I was working on the still lives, but my real interest was the figure, was the human figure.
I mean, certainly in the context of Malaysia too, there are conservative Muslims, politicized Muslims who feel that to draw a figure is against the teachings of Islam. It could lead to idolatry.
I think what interested me was not the act of smoking. The smoke from the cigarette was covering the person's face. It wasn't a physical mask, but it was a psychological mask. The works after that took on a different dimension.
There was a period when Zaki's alma mater, ITM, actually did not teach figure drawing because of the influence of a politicized Islam at the art school.
Movies play a very important role in my works, because a lot of the early works, especially the Smoker series, where you see these two characters at the edge of the frame of the painting, those works were very much influenced by the spaghetti westerns, You'll see how Sergio Leone frames the gunfight. That is when I learned the psychological implication of space, of empty space, how important it is. That space between the gunfighters, it's a psychological space, which tells a lot about everything that's going on between these men, Composition is psychological.
Oh my God, why?
Scary.
That's scary.
It's like a cigarette, should we think? I learned a lot about human nature by working at LifeZone. You're working with some very difficult people. Addiction is a terrible problem. You need to experience it actually, what it is like to have no control. Absolutely no control. An addict, will do anything to get a fix, anything at all. This is our shelter home. It's called Dignity. It's run by LifeZone. What we do is what we call harm reduction. Getting them to stop taking drugs can be very difficult, so we do the next best thing, Stopping them from spreading HIV, not to just other addicts, but to their families and their children. We had some problems with the residences here, because it's a residential area. And they didn't like it that we have a shuttle home here. I guess now they are quite used to it. Yeah, these were drawings that were done for a fundraising that we had for Live Zoom. But these are just prints actually. The original drawings are bigger. Yeah. Bagus. Petang semua. This is our outreach workers. And what they do is they go out and interact with drug users and telling them how to use clean needles. And we also have our group of sex workers. They look after the street walkers and teach them how to do safe sex. Ada apa-apa nak bincang? Ada apa-apa masalah kerja ke? Daripada sex workers ada apa-apa? Tak ada, semua bagus. Jadi kalau awak pergi kawasan Cina tak boleh?
Boleh, kita ada ambil kelas Mandarin. Bulan 4 ni habis, kita sikit-sikit.
Okay, bagus. They couldn't get a Chinese sex worker, so they're learning Mandarin. Awak tak ada apa masalah?
Pasal macam biasalah, setiap kali Malaysia ada satu upacara besar, maka mangsa-mangsanya ketua-ketuaan inilah plan kita. Contohnya setahun sekarang visit Malaysia Year, itu hari Chinese New Year dah serentak di banyak, dia orang buat operasi lah. Maka hilanglah sekejap kita punya klien.
We get a lot of donations, rice. This is our staff. Right now we have 16 residents here. They're all HIV positive, so they have to have regular blood tests. Let's go down this way. Yeah, we use the 12-step program here, NA, Narcotics Anonymous. Very much like Alcoholic Anonymous.
So, yang penting di dalam perubahan ni fighting spirit. Tak ada fighting spirit, kau tak boleh menang. Betul tak? Kau buat decision, kau buat keputusan. Jadi kalau kau tak ajak kawal diri, tak ada fighting spirit, keputusan untuk hidup. Pasal banyak yang keluar tu minta mati. Kalau yang ada rekod tu kau keluar, kau buat baik, kau lagi hebat. Betul tak? Ini banyak-banyak budak kita dan geng-geng kita kalau keluar tak ada rekod yang baik.
When I was a student, one of the assignments that we had for art history was to copy a painting by an old master. The painting that I chose to copy was by Velasquez. It was Christ on the cross. It was a crucifixion. It wasn't easy in the beginning, because it's such a foreign notion. I was always intrigued by any form of religious image. Doesn't matter whether it's Islam or Christianity or Buddhism or Hinduism.
His journey or his excavations have taken him into a part of both the Malay and Southeast Asian past that today is very contentious, which is basically the very vibrant and still very vital pre-Islamic past, influenced by Hinduism and Buddhism. He's painting a Buddha heads, for example. The Malays, they didn't get rid of their pre-Islamic traditions. They rationalized them, and there was a process of a metamorphosis in which such pre-Islamic beliefs fit in very nicely with more mystical trends in Islam. And the Malays were mystics. And that has been the experience of Islam for all these centuries, up till very recent times in the past 40 or 50 years. The challenge of puritanical Islam has been a more recent one. The rise of Wahhabism, terrorism, Al-Qaeda-ism, 9/11-ism, Bush reactionism, all these kinds of things. We understand Islam within that prism. Islam has so many dimensions in which people can operate and gravitate. And it is our reductionist approach, not just by non-Muslims, but increasingly by Muslims, that Islam is exclusivist, and it's this. Aspects of Islamic law, what can and cannot be done, dominate everything.
When the term break ended, I came back to school and I found someone had slashed the paintings. There was a group of quite radical Muslims running around in the campus in those days, and I think it was them.
Of course, it is a difficult climate to be controversial in this country because, I feel that the controversies, the attacks are really generated for political reasons. There's a political project in terms of wanting the country to remain, and the Malays in particular, and the Muslims in particular, to be a certain kind of Malay, a certain kind of Muslim, conservative, traditional. I think with all fundamentalists and conservatives, it's about control, conformity, power, and they having the sole power and authority to decide this is how you should think, this is how you should act, this is how you should paint.
I first came to London in 1984, I think. When you live in Malaysia, you don't get to see great art. The artists that you admire, you see in books, in magazines.
What are you looking for when you see a piece of art?
I don't look, I feel. It's more about, if the piece makes your heart skips a bit, So if it does, then I'm interested, If I look at it and it doesn't do anything to my feelings, then, I don't give it much thought. The painting in the book has hardly any soul. It's a reproduction. But, a painting on the wall, in the gallery, or in the museum, the connection is direct, and there's nothing like it. A lot of young artists look at a place like this and they want the success, But behind the success, there's a lot of hard work, a lot of disappointments, So you have to learn to handle all those. None of the artists who are shown here had an easy life, If you look at those works we see in the last gallery, the Brancusi and Mondrian, and those were the early days of modernism, and they had to struggle to find a new language to speak, to get rid of representational art, so they have to feel their way around, and it wasn't easy, Today you look at them, they're nice here in this nice modern museum, The artwork looks so pristine on the wall, but the making of it is different. The thing with contemporary art, it's following a Western art discourse, So even when I was in school, we learned Western art history. There's very few Asian art history. Even today, there's no curriculum for, let's say, a history of Southeast Asian art. No one's really writing serious stuff, about Southeast Asian art and sort of compile it into into a proper art historical perspective, I think it's a shame. And then you're an artist and you're into Western art theories and practices. So where do you put all these things that you grew up with? If you're a Buddhist or a Muslim or a Hindu, there's a lot of mystical, spiritual things that goes on, things which you grew up with, the rituals and all that. And how do you place that? Where do you place that? Because those things are not really acceptable.
What are the forces that drive spiritual and artistic development in the region? Is creativity a form of rebellion?
So it is a great pleasure to welcome Young Mei today.
So, back in the bad old days of the British Empire, the British controlled the dominant point of view. So in a photograph like this, we would know the names of all the British people in it. Lord this, General that. But the natives, those other people out there, the natives, they don't have names. We don't have to care about them. So fast forward to the post-war period. The colonies all over the British Empire were rebelling. They wanted to be seen and heard.
Our next speaker is Zaki Anwar. Now, Zaki has very modestly asked me to introduce him as just a Malaysian artist, but I will use my prerogative as chair to state that Zaki is in fact one of the leading artists in the Southeast Asian region.
Well, living in Malaysia, which is a very conservative country, there are many restrictions. Sexual preferences, sexual identities are very touchy subject for most people. There were a few people who refused to go to my exhibitions, which I know, because I painted this kind of images, But you do things which you have to do, and whatever reaction there is, you just have to handle it. Islamic fundamentalism is on the rise in Malaysia, and the idea of I love Indian food, so look, it's an orgy of Indian food. Look at that. You have the lamb samosa?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah? And do you have tea? Tea with condensed milk, Sweden condensed milk? Yeah, with sugar. Make it sweet, make it sweet. Rebellion is today fashionable, But I think a lot of kids don't understand that rebellion is a process, It has to end up in some sort of a conclusion, You rebel against something bad, but you have a projection in mind to make things better. You don't just rebel because it's fashionable, because rebellion is not a job. Yeah, it's not a career. You rebel when you want to change things.
When Zaki moved into painting nudes, he, of course, caused some controversy. It's a way of gauging social attitudes. They essentially see nudes and male nudes as pornographic.
Well, I admire the courage that he has, to draw things that are not politically correct. The Buddha paintings, the nudes, and these are things that supposedly the good Muslim will not do and would, of course, incur the wrath of, the conservatives within society, but I think it's irrelevant to him.
These are very important ways of challenging the notion of what comprises Islamic tenets. You are born nude, you die nude. And I don't think it's so much an overt sexuality of the human body that Zaki is preoccupied with.
Silhouette Figure 1 was a painting that triggered the nude series. I couldn't figure out how to make a painting with the nude. The nudes was actually a direct response towards my involvement in Sufism.
It is not something that is ignored in Islam. In fact, it's contemplated a great deal in Islam. The nature of sexuality, which is then related to the nature of being. All of this can be found in Sufistic traditions. And at heart, I think Zaki is very much a Sufistic painter.
The reason he's not wearing any clothes is because I want him to be in his natural state. So you can't identify him whether he's wearing Western clothes or Eastern clothes or whether he's of this race or that race. You know, he is a universal man. It was something totally against Islam, you know. But then the works were never meant to be about eroticism or... It has elements of that, but it was never meant to be erotic or sexually explicit. When I first started the nude series, you know, there was various responses. You know, some people think I'm gay, which is fine with me, you know. I don't find anything wrong with being gay. Some people think they're dirty, you know. Very few people can connect it to something religious.
So what's wrong with erotic painting? I don't see anything wrong with it, you know. If people want to choose to be offended by it, that's their right to be offended by it, but they don't have a right to impose their values on other people who don't share those values, you know. I mean, what more artists? They should be totally free, you know, to paint what they want to paint.
Always remember that some of the most erotic poetry that we have in the world today were written by Muslim mystics, people like Rumi, Hafiz and Attar. And I see Zaki in this line.
Although, you know, the painting is painted by me, you know, but to complete the work, it has to interact with the public. I'm giving the audience the minimal of clues, actually, yeah, so that you can open up your minds. You know, I'm giving you a lot of room to roam, yeah, to interpret. Religion and art, yeah, for me, they're like twins. I've touched on various traditional subjects in the works. The Bali dances, the silat pieces. Nakyung actually is an exorcism, which involves music, dance, incantations. It's performed when there is someone sick in the house. It is banned by the past government in Kelantan because it's seen as un-Islamic. But they still practice it today, but secretly. These are the kind of things which interest me, you know, that spiritual effect, side of these performances. The dancers, the musicians, you know, they're all done for God.
The dance drama form called the Mak Yong, which is an all-female dance drama form, is very much rooted in the belief that we all possess animal spirits that then define our own personalities. So we may be an eagle, we may be a crocodile, we could be a lion, we could be a tiger, we could be a wolf, a serigala.
And sometimes, you know, I may take like a dirty little animal, like the babirusa. You know, the babirusa is a small, dirty animal. I saw it in the Singapore Zoo. You wouldn't want to take it home if you. You know, I was compelled to make this babirusa into something magnificent, profound even. And I can only do that if I inject myself into it. I give this little animal my personality.
For many people, of course, it's shocking because we have been severed of that mythological tradition. And today, if you go to large parts of Southeast Asia, and particularly in Malaysia, not only are these kinds of myths not encouraged, they are seriously abused and made illegitimate.
The current series I'm working on is Tales from the Primordial Garden. You have that thing within you, that word I mentioned just now, Ihsan, yeah, about doing things beautifully. But then you have that other side of you, you know, the dark side, the more disturbing aspects of your personality, you know, that has to come out too. In Islam, you know, like in Bali, you know, good and evil sits together, yeah. Both are creatures of God.
I see him within a continuum of artists who carry this primordial spirit that is very particular to this region. When he paints, he actually invokes an entire landscape of this place that has also very strong historical resonances. You do understand that you're entering a landscape of color and of a sensibility, of a temperament, and of a kind of spiritual memory.
We are in Jalan Meldrum. Normally if I go to town late at night, this is where I hang out. Have tea, watch people, you know. After hours in the studio alone, you know, it's nice to sort of go to a place where there's a crowd, yeah. And this is my kind of crowd. I'm a night owl. When everyone goes to sleep, when my wife is sleeping and the kids are sleeping, that time for me is kind of special because I'm alone, you know. And especially late at night, you know, I don't get phone calls, and so it's the time I have for myself actually, yeah. Late at night, after midnight, when everyone is asleep, then you know, that's my time. This particular series, the Kota Sunyi and the Kota Sepi series, was a series which I wanted to do especially on JB as a town, because at least once in my career I would like to acknowledge, you know, the town where I grew up in, where I was born. Kota Sepi and Kota Sunyi started from the streets here, and in the back alleys behind the streets. It just records life of people who are in the fringes of society. Well, I don't think I like it in Johor because I'm anonymous here. It's just the place where I was born. You know, I grew up here. It's a small town, very simple life. The town is growing now, so I might have to move. But, you know, this is where I was born, and I like being here. Yeah, I don't like the big cities. These are actually life studies which I did in Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City. We were traveling with a group of Indonesian artists. We went around Saigon looking for models, but we couldn't find any, you know. But in the end, we found a couple of models in a brothel, actually, who were willing to pose for us. I don't normally do female nudes. I don't have much of a choice. When you're drawing the nude, you know, naturally eroticism comes into it, you know. And here I think I tried to capture that sensuality, but very quickly. In Malaysia, although it's a fairly conservative country and we have this, what you would call the moral police, you know, making sure everyone behaves. But, you know, I mean, I've been drawing and painting nudes for years and they've never bothered me. The female nude is not anything new, isn't it? Artists has been drawing nudes for centuries, but it's just that here in this country, people get a bit sensitive. I would prefer drawing a female rather than a male, you know, nicer to see. Not nice to see a nude man live in front of you for hours. My children, you know, they go to school. I know what they teach in school, you know, but they need to go through that, you know. But when they come home and they're with me, you know, I present to them an alternate point of view, you know. And as they grow older, I start exposing them to, you know, a lot of things, you know. Talk to them about life, you know, about religion, about Sufism, you know, and especially about not being afraid to explore, yeah, and not to be afraid of other cultures or religion, to be able to stay a Muslim but still be a man of the world.